I'm John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high and low. Cinema Classics on NBC.
Cinema Classics is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. And listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
And this is Cinema Classics. Mary, usually you and I do the heavy duty film reviews. I have no problem offering you but just about anything that's complex and allegorical and so on and so on. So I thought this time let's do something really light. And does it get lighter than Charade?
Not for the mashup genres that this film represents, no.
1963.
Yes, which automatically qualifies it as a classic because it's older than I am.
You're right. Yes, it is. Yeah, and Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn starring makes it pretty much a winner right from the gate.
Well, you have that. You have shot on location in Paris. You have Audrey dressed in couture from Givenchy.
Yes.
What's not to like about this setup of this film?
And Cary Grant aging just a bit, but nobody ages the way he did. He's just so elegant and so charming. I guess that's the best word for him.
Very much so.
Yeah. And he's the lead.
He is the lead. He was a reluctant lead. This film was directed by Stanley Donen, who was mostly known for directing musicals, including everybody's favorite musical, Singin' in the Rain. And he and Cary were friends, but initially Cary turned down the script, one, because he was considering another film at the time, but two, he also felt the age difference between he and Audrey, which was 25 years, was a bit too great to overcome now that he was in his late 50s. He felt it might be a little creepy having him be the pursuer. And so when he did agree to do the film, the script was rewritten so that Audrey's character, Reggie, becomes the pursuer more so than he did in his role as, pick your name, Brian, Adam, Alexander, etc.
I think that the main one is Peter Joshua.
Peter Joshua. Well, that's how we first meet him.
Yes, and I want to talk a little bit later about the similarities with Alfred Hitchcock's work, and particularly
Yes.
North by Northwest.
As we should, because this film is often identified as the greatest Alfred Hitchcock film that Alfred Hitchcock did not make.
Very good. So what's the story, Mary?
So we meet Reggie and Peter at the ski resort in the Swiss Alps, and Audrey is, or Reggie, is confessing to her best friend that she's going to return to Paris and ask for a divorce from her husband, who is named Charles Lampert. Meanwhile, while that conversation's happening, Charles is being murdered and tossed off a train somewhere.
First shot we have is off the train.
Yes, it is. He's being tossed off the train.
Yeah,
And
great shot of, I think, his blank look.
yes. And an uncredited actor. I could not find out who played the role of Charles Lampert.
Yeah.
So, in returning to Paris, after having met Peter in the Swiss Alps, she enters an empty apartment that her husband has basically cleaned out, sold everything at auction,
Yes.
and she finds out that he's murdered, and Peter shows up having returned to Paris at the same time and offers to help her. But we find out that her husband, not surprisingly, is not who she thought he was, and in fact, he has many people after him for $250,000 that they all collectively stole on an OSS assignment.
Isn't it funny, Mary, as you're talking, $250,000? What's that?
Well,
In the bucket.
today.
Yeah, I know.
It's in the millions of dollars.
Yes, I know it, yeah. It always seems so funny when they're talking about it. I think, look, let's not fight over this small amount of money, but then we're talking how many years ago?
Yes, this is
60 years ago?
Yeah, 1963.
1963. So I thought, Dolan probably didn't know how amusing it would be 60 years later for them to be fighting over the scraps. And one other observation I made is that Audrey Hepburn is such a cool actress. Even when she opens up the doors to her apartment and everything's gone, she's still holly-golightly cool. You know, there's something about that actress. And, like this, and, many other actresses would be screaming to think that they'd lost all of their possessions, and she keeps it cool.
Well, and this script, I think, is written just with ideal dialogue. I mean, talk about banter between
Yes.
the character played by Cary Grant and the character played by Audrey Hepburn. And some of it was ad-libbed, and there are some lines which I wish we could find out which lines were ad-libbed, because, for example, Peter helps her find an apartment that she can live in, or I guess it's a small boutique hotel, and it has an open elevator, and so they're getting off the elevator together to go to her room, and he makes the comment about the neighborhood where she lives, which is a direct lift from a song in
Yes.
My Fair Lady.
Yes.
And you see Audrey's face just tick a little bit, but they kept going with the scene. But there were so many things like that where I thought they're trying to really get to each other, but the dialogue was so witty to begin with.
Yes.
And they were both, I think, at some of their comedic best, playing off each other and delivering those lines for these two characters. And I think when we talk about this being similar to Hitchcock, it is in terms of the story and the plot, but it has a less dark, sinister aspect to it and more of a light, comedic, and even romantic comedy aspect to it than most Hitchcock films.
I was thinking that this is probably due to Donan's extensive experience with musicals.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Very light touch with the characters.
Yeah. Now what about these goons?
Well, it is a who's who of actors. We have Walter Matthau, James Coburn, George Kennedy, and most wouldn't know his name, but they would certainly recognize his face as Ned Glass, a really great character actor who played Doc in West Side Story. He plays the other goon. And one of the opening scenes after Regina/Reggie returns to Paris is the funeral for Charles. And it is the most outrageous, funniest
Isn't it wonderful?
funeral scene you will ever see in your entire life, because all three of the surviving goons show up and they basically want to make sure he's dead. And so one of them just looks at him. One of them brings a mirror and holds it in front of his face. I think it was James Coburn.
Oh, was it Coburn? Yeah. Very cool, young James Coburn.
Yes, and then George Kennedy comes in and stabs him with a needle.
Yes.
And they all just kind of barge in, go up to the casket, check it out, and leave or just sit back down. And those are the only people at the funeral other than the police detective, Reggie, and Reggie's best friend.
Now, this is certainly an easy run for Walter Matthau. What's his character like in this?
So I don't know, should we go into depth about it? Or?
Well, I'm just kind of interested in people out there have heard of Walter Matthau, some know. My son is friends with his son, so that there's something about him that's important to me, but he seems to play a similar character many times.
Well, he, in this role, plays what we believe to be a good guy. He is who Reggie meets with at the U.S. Embassy and is told that her husband isn't who she thinks he is, and that they believe he has $250,000 and that these three men are after her, and that she needs to work with him to find the money. But that may not be all there is to say
Nothing
about
is
that
as it
character. And in this case, he does not have much of a comedic role.
No.
It's pretty much a straightforward role. But he was a great character actor and starred in many films. But in terms of comedy, he was the original Oscar in The Odd Couple.
Yeah,
So, and he had some great roles later on in life with Jack Lemmon. So opposite him. So he was just a great character actor, but because of his visage and dark coloring, he
Yeah.
often played a bad guy.
Yeah, and is a hangdog look that nobody has been able to replicate.
Yes, he did have a hangdog look with those jowls.
Yeah. So, Mary, is this the kind of film, Charade, that contemporary audiences could enjoy?
You know, there's a lot about it that doesn't stand the test of time, but it's so well written, so well acted, and so lush to be on location in Paris, seeing Audrey Hepburn dressed in Hubert de Givenchy
Yes.
haute couture. And the witty dialogue
Yes.
just really makes it a fun romp. And would it translate today to be remade in the same manner? No, it wouldn't. But it's a fun romp. I would recommend it.
So you do recommend it? Okay.
I do.
All
What
right.
about you?
Yes, I do so, and I do it when I just got back from seeing the a new version of The Mummy, which is by any standards grisly. And so this, even with the mirrors and the pinpricking of the corpse and so on, and even with that opening shot, there's no way can it put me off. It really seems benign.
Well, and some of almost similar to Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, we start to lose some of these characters, and not in pleasant ways.
And you can stream this.
Yes, you can.
I'm John DeSando.
Cinema, 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 cinema. Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda